Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So I have the analysis done for Yae Miko in terms of constellation comparison as well as weapon refinement comparison too. But before that, let us just quickly run through the new banner information that's just been released today. The character banner for Yae Miko as well as the weapon banner for her signature weapon. Once that is done, we'll go into the cost benefit and analysis and the math portion. Yeah. So first off, Yae Miko's character banner. We have been waiting so long for her, right? So MiHoYo knows that as well. MiHo knows you're gonna pull for her. And I'm really glad that they did not give worse 4-star characters than this. There are other 4-star characters that I can think of that are worse, but I don't want to name them because yeah, let's not bash on the characters. But Diona, a very good shooter. She's actually my second go-to shooter option in Abyss. With the first team obviously having Zhongli and second team having Diona. Thoma is also a good shooter, especially for pyrocoms with Yomiya and even for Hu-Tao, because he gives you shield while giving you the pyro enabling portion as well, the pyro application portion as well. And his shield, although it starts weaker than Diona's shield, it has the potential to go better. But you do need to take note initially in terms of not taking too much damage. So there's a bit of a different playstyle involved when it comes to using Thoma versus Diona. Fisher, she's actually a good electro battery for Yae Miko. Although both of them are doing a sub DPS role, so yeah, it is going to be double sub DPS when you use the two of them together. Okay, so that's the character banner. I think this is actually pretty good because MiHoYo can definitely give you worse 4-star characters than this. Okay, now let's talk about the weapon banner. I'm trying to go faster for this video. So for the weapon banner, you have Kagura's Verity, which is obviously her signature weapon. If you want to know what it does, just refer to my math guide 1. I've covered that in detail. I'll put the link in the top right corner, as well as in the in-video links, yeah, so you guys can access it easily, and the description. Likewise, I have actually previously done a shoulder comparison, and that will also be included in the video links, yeah. Then, okay, now I finished talking about Kagura's Verity. Just a quick note on it. The second 5-star weapon we have is Primal the Jade Cutter. Now, this was rumored for quite some time now. It's good to see that it's being officially confirmed. And we all know that this is a great weapon, right? I mean, it's not as great as Mistsplitter Reforged right now, but it's still very good on several characters, and more importantly, Mistsplitter Reforged requires you to have elemental normal attacks, so you do have to build your comp around that. Or certain characters don't need to do it, they can just make use of it. Example, Ayaka, because Mistsplitter is her signature weapon to begin with. Okay. Now, PJC, no doubt that is good. In fact, PJC, okay, I'm just going to go give you guys a bit of a history here for PJC. PJC is so good that it's typically coupled with a bad weapon. Previously, it was with Kokomi's Everlasting Moonglow, the donut, and that weapon was really bad. It was like 10 to 11% better than Prototype Ember. And that's why it's paired with a good weapon like PJC. So this time around, we have PJC paired with Kagura's Verity. Does it mean that Kagura's Verity is bad? Well, I have already done the comparison against R5 Widsith. I provided all the caveats, all the analysis points I can think of on why Widsith is overhyped and why this weapon is not as bad as you think. So do refer to that, the Widsith math guide. I'll put it in the top right corner as well as in the video links here, as well as the description, so you can easily access that. Now, that's it for the 5-star weapon, what I wanted to talk about before we go on the cost-benefit analysis. Now, where the 4-star weapons, you have Stringless here, which is still pretty good for Venti, a crit build Venti especially, or even a EM Venti. And you have Sacrificial Sword, and oh, Stringless is also good on characters like Child, Fisher. It's still okay. And you have Sacrificial Sword. Sacrificial Sword is just such a great utility weapon on so many of these sort of characters, into Electro Traveler, Chi even. You have Wave Breaker's Fee, which is above average for sure, especially if you set up your team to have high energy. And now we have Yae Miko with 90 energy, a 90 energy burst. Eye of Perception and Ring Slasher, however, I'm not fans of these two weapons. They aren't great in my opinion. Especially for Catalyst, you have so many different options. But it's okay, because typically on a weapon banner, you would have 2 to 3 4-star weapons that are good, while the rest of the 4-star weapons aren't great. And this is exactly what you have here. But more importantly, the 2 5-star weapons here are pretty good. Okay, they are pretty good. So this is a decent weapon banner. And there's a reason why this weapon banner is so good, and I will talk about it later in my analysis. So this is it with regards to the 2 banner information, given my thoughts with regards to 5-star and 4-star options. Now let's look at the cost-benefit analysis. Alright, this is the cost-benefit analysis. Before we do the analysis, these are the figures. So I'll just quickly run through the figures so that you guys know what I'm talking about here. So constellation value, very straightforward, right? Individual constellation value versus cumulative. And with the individual simply means when you go from C0-C1, you get 21%. When you go from C1 to C2, you get 15%. When you go from C2 to C3, you get a 12% boost. So on and so forth. Cumulative simply is like what it says. It adds on directly from C0. So C0 to C1 is 21%. C0 to C2 is 38%. C0-C3, 55%, and you have a whopping 126% when you go from C0 to C6. So that's for Constellations. We have the refinements for Kagura when you go from R1 to R5. This is the boost that you get. 16 to 70%. Honestly, not that great, especially when compared to her Constellations. Then you have R5 Widsith, average to R1 Kagura. So when you go from R5 Widsith average to R1 Kagura. Now, if you're wondering what average here means, basically I did the math previously for Kagura with elemental damage buff, Kagura with the 120% attack, sorry, not Kagura, Widsith with the 96% elemental damage bonus, with R5 Widsith with the 120% attack, and R5 Widsith with the 480 EM. So I've done math for all 3 of those, and we put them together and came up with average figure to properly reflect it, because you can't always get elemental damage bonus buff on your Widsith. Okay, there's no way to reliably prod that. It's completely RNG. It's completely random. So that being said, the percentages figures are here. It's about 16 to 19% when you go from R5 Widsith average to R1 Kagura. So I've already talked about whether 16 to 90% is considered good or bad in the Widsith math guide. So be sure to check that out if you have not already. Look at it. Just a quick note here for C4, the 7% here only includes Yae's damage, but this actually benefits all your electro damage dealing teammates as well, right? And why I say electro damage dealing teammates, because it includes characters like the animal characters who can infuse electro on their burst. Okay, so there is a potential for this to be more than 7%, but that is in terms of team DPS. In terms of just Yae's DPS alone, it is a 7% increase. Okay. Now this is actually this is pretty much the same thing that I have done as per my Raidens C0, C3 and R1, R5 analysis, cost benefit analysis. There's no change to this whether it's Yae or any other weapon for sure, because this is simply the current wish system that we have. So optimistic pool, you can get 65 pools, you get 1 constellation. I know it's not really optimistic per se. The most optimistic is 2 5-stars in the first 10 pool, for example, right? But anyway, yeah, this is optimistic and realistic at the same time. Then you have the worst case soft pity, meaning you require soft pity on both pools and you lose the 50-50 and you get 150. And then you have the worst case hard pity, which is 90 pools each for a 5-star. So average of this figure. My figures are also kinda conservative, because technically speaking, on average, right, you don't really need 450. In fact, the real average will be slightly lower. It will be between this figure and this figure. But I wanted to give a real 50% average kind of scenario to help with realistic management of your expectations, because Gacha Banner is obviously very, very random in nature. It's a huge variance depending on your luck. Okay, so for weapons, these are the figure. These are the costs in terms of the number of pools. By the way, this translates to the number of pools. So multiply by that by 160, and that's the number of primo gems. Yeah, it's not cheap. Okay, so bear in mind, let's go into the cost benefit analysis. But before I start, I just want to give a quick disclaimer or a important assumption to note. Bear in mind that the optimistic cost figures above are just estimates and exploration, not just optimistic, really. Everything here, this portion is math for sure. This portion is estimates and extrapolation. So in the end, it's down to luck, because unless you're doing 1000 plus pools, then the average will be more accurate. Otherwise, it's very, very dependent on your luck. But honestly, for experience, you will seldom hit hard PT. At least for me, I only reached hard PT 2 to 3 times thus far. This is the same statement I put in the Raiden video, and till date, I can still say the same thing. Yeah, so that should be a very, very strong statement. But the average figure here is an average between optimistic and worst case for PT, and it's actually not too far from the simulation figures shared in Reddit. Okay, so for the rest, oops, this should not be shown. My bad. For the rest of the video, we're gonna go into C1 versus R1, C1 to C2 versus R1, C2 to C3 versus R1, C3 versus R5, and C3 plus. Just a quick note and some final notes. But it's okay if my final notes were shown earlier, because the individual comparisons here are not included in the final notes. Yep, this is not TLDR, this is just final notes. So let's go into detail on C1 versus R1. C1 gives you 21% boosts, you can see here. R1 Kagura gives you 16% boost over R5 Widsith, the average. If I choose to compare against attack or EM, this percentage will be much bigger. If I choose to compare against elemental damage buff, this percentage will be smaller. So it's okay, we'll just take the average percentage figure here. And you'll notice that at different constellations, the percentage do vary a little. Okay. So with this difference of a 5% for C1 giving you 5% more, and yet the average pools to get R1 versus C1 is higher for R1. Because let's look at this, right? The average pool to get R1 is 125. Average pool to get one constellation is about 107.5. Okay, so weapon do cost you more, and yet here constellation gives you more. So I think it's a very, very straightforward thing to say that when you are trying to decide between C1 or R1, C1 is your go-to option, right? But bear in mind, my C0 versus C1 figures are very conservative and assumes a high amount of EI is required for her. 150 for C0 and 190. Sorry, 100. Wait. This statement is wrong. It's 150 for C1 and 190 for C0. Okay. So if she still requires at least 150 ER, the C0 fee versus C1 figures more or less holds, because we don't know exactly how much she needs until she's released and for us to play her and test her out, whether she really needs 190 or maybe she only needs 150. But even if she only needs 150, the C0 versus C1 figures more or less holds, because C0 is using ER sense, C1 is not. And besides, if you need 150 ER, sometimes you can just do it with a ER sense, and that shows you the amount of damage you lose out, right? Stats wise. If she requires less than 150 ER, the C0 versus C1 difference may be slightly smaller, but given that it's a 21% boost, even if it's smaller, even if it goes to be the exact same percentage as a R1 Kagura, it will still be better to go for Constellation because average pools are lower. Now again, this is just average figure, yes. Yeah, if I can't cover for cases where you're so lucky that you win the 50-50 or the 33-33 for Kagura. first 5 star you get Kagura, and on the character banner, let's say if you lose the 50-50, then obviously weapon will be much cheaper than character Constellation. But that is again luck. Okay. But I'll say between deciding to get C1 or R1, when you already have C0, C1 is our go-to option. If you already have C1, C1 to C2 is 15% versus R1 18%. This is the 15% we're talking about, and this is the 18% we're talking about. Again, assuming you have R5 Widsith. Now, this is more or less considered as net to net, because although the R1 percentage is higher, R1 also costs more on average compared to getting one Constellation. But if you are looking to get PJC, Primary Cutter, then it may be worth it to put on the Weapon Banner, right? Assuming if you manage to get a R1 within the same number of pulls when you get a C1 to C2, and at the same time you did get a PJC before that, you actually get a PJC plus a Kagura's Verity. So, better rewards, right? But higher risk. So this is why I say it's up to your risk appetite. What I can do is to give you guys the percentage boost that you can get, and it's up to you to evaluate how you want to manage your pools. I can only give very high level recommendations, because after all, it is your money. Okay, it is your resources. If you are not spending money on game but you have been saving up on fates, wishes, it is your game resources as well. It is your effort in saving those resources. It is a testament to your patience as well, right? Yeah. Now, let's talk about C2 to C3 versus R1. If you already have C2, C2 to C3 is only 12% versus R1 19%. See here, 12% versus 19%, right? Okay. So, we now have a situation where the Constellation boost is significantly lower. Oh wait, let's typo here. Significantly lower than the weapon boost by 7%, even factoring in higher weapon cost. So the decision to put one more Constellation on R1 when you have C2 I would say will mainly lie in how many fates you have left. Take for example, if you only have 150 pulls left, C3 is a safer option since you can afford to lose 50-50, right? But for weapon, you do need some luck to get R1 Kagura with 150 pulls. It's entirely possible that you do not get R1 Kagura with 150 pulls, and then you lose out on getting any boost for your Yae Miko. But again, if getting PJC is good for you, i.e. you have a short DPS that can already make use of it, you may want to consider this. So, depends on your risk appetite. But I'll say that the rewards for C2 to C3 versus C1 to C2, C2 to C3 gives you a better reward. It's more worthwhile, kind of more worthwhile to try on the Weapon Banner, because you do get a bigger difference, right? 7% versus 3%. Very importantly, depends on your risk appetite, yeah? Now, let's talk about C3 versus R5 in terms of overall pools. For me personally, Weapon Banner on average is about 450 to 480 pulls for R5 with fate points. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. Take for example my Ito Red Hornstone Treasure, it was very low. But prior to that, I did have one that was very long, much more than this. I can't remember which character it was. But it averages out in the end, so it'll be about 450 to 480 pulls for R5. Which coincidentally is also the worst case soft pity for a C3. So if we look at R5 Kaguras, it gives you a 36 to 40% boost over R5 Widsith. But when you go from C0-C3, you get a 55% boost. So 55 versus the highest possibility 40%. It's still a significant 15% more. 1-5. So if you have 500 pulls, C3 is definitely the go-to option first. Any additional wishes remaining can go to the Weapon Banner for some YOLO. Yeah? Straightforward stuff, right? Maybe if you're lucky, you win the 50-50 all the time. You have saved out all your 500 pulls, you win the 50-50 all the time, and then... Okay, actually you can't really save out the 500 pulls, right? Saving out the 200 pulls is already requires a lot of patience. But yeah, you get what I mean. C3 is definitely better than trying to go for a weapon only after getting your C3 Any other additional wishes, you can go to Weapon Banner for some YOLO, or you can save it and leave it for Ayaka, for example. Up to you. Okay, a quick note of C3 plus. C4 is only 7% here, but it's only Yae's damage. Okay, so I actually covered this earlier. So basically, it does give you more DPS. It's just that for Yae Miko's DPS is only 7%. C5 is a pretty low boost, and it's essentially just a stepping stone in C6, which is expected, right? Because C5 just gives you C5 gives you 3 burst levels, which effectively increases your burst damage by about 20%. But given that our Yae Miko math is really based on a long duration and not just her burst, the percentage boost it gives is indeed lower. Okay. C6, Yae Miko actually has one of the highest DPS boosts from C0-C6. She gets a whopping cumulative 126%. That's a lot. This is because individual constellations do help with her damage. And obviously C6 is really good because it ignores 60% of the opponent's defense. And that works even better against a higher level opponent. This 60% in defense ignoring works even better against a level 100 character or enemy in the Spiral Abyss versus a level 90. Because a level 100 enemy will have more defense against you. That's just how the defense formula works. So for reference, Ito's C0-C6 is 83% versus Yae Miko's 126%. But this is just the constellation boost value. Ito will still do more damage in a shorter duration because he is an own field DPS. Okay, it takes up time on the field. Yae doesn't, other than during her casting her burst and putting down her turrets or her Sakuras. So yeah, it's unrealistic to think that if Ito's percentage is lower, he will end up doing lesser damage than Yae. Nah, it doesn't work that way. This is simply comparing within each of their constellation and damage. Okay? So I hope this helps for you to appreciate Yae C0-C6 is actually very high value. Because even a strong character like Ito, his C0-C6 is just 83%. Should I say just? Okay, anyway. This is very tempting. That's all I can say. Now, let's look at the final notes. Even though Widsith is overhyped, it still remains a very good 4-star option for her, which is why it's being used here in the cost-benefit analysis. And if you take the future into consideration, pulls on character and weapon banner contribute towards guarantee on banner if you get 1, but weapon fate points will reset. That's one important factor to always remember while you're pulling. Yeah? I'm talking about a scenario where, let's say you have gotten your C2, you want to pull more on your... You can't decide between C3 or weapon. Other than what I've shared earlier, you can also consider the fact that your PT can carry forward, but your weapon fate points will reset. Okay. Now, given the constellation values are pretty good up to C3, it's actually worthwhile trying to get more constellations gradually through rerun banners. That's another reason to pull on her character banner for her, to try to invest in her constellations. And the other thing is that Kagura is actually kinda niche, actually requires you to use elemental skill 3 times to get max stats, not hit. Okay, it's use. So pretty much other than Yae Miko, only Klee with Cancer Tag or Ningguang with C2 can reliably utilize this, I'll say. Okay. Now the other 5-star weapon PJC, however, is pretty top tier. Like I said, it's behind Miss Splitter, but Miss Splitter has condition, so it's very tempting. But take a step back and consider this. Personally, I will only factor into consideration if I have a sword DPS already well built, meaning that character is already level 80 at least, or 90 even, with talent levels invested in as well as artifacts that you can switch around to utilize the high CR. Because if you don't have those artifacts to begin with, the high CR is just going to be a waste. Okay? So these are all points to take into consideration, yeah? So to conclude, right, I'll say it's better to go for Constellations in general. I hope you get lucky enough to win 50-50, especially if you have a decent, if you already have a decent number of 5-star weapons, then you don't stand to gain as much from losing 50-50 on the weapon banner, right? And this is the reason why MiHoYo is placing PJC with Kagura's, because they know Yae's early constellations are good, so the weapon banner has to be attractive. So it's slightly different from Kokomi's situation, where the other 5-star weapon is very bad, that's why they need PJC to carry the banner, right? In this case, it's different. In this case, they want to put PJC with Kagura, because Yae's early constellations are very good. So they want to make the weapon banner more attractive. That's why they make the weapon banner having PJC. Okay? Anyway, last but not least, please spend responsibly within your means, yeah? Whatever I'm saying here is a percentage boost analysis. I am not advocating spending money on this game. It is up to you. Okay? All I can do, like I said, is to give you a cost-benefit analysis. You decide how you want to take the information and apply it to your spending. Okay? Yep. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope this cost-benefit analysis as well as my thoughts on the and the review on the character banner and the weapon banner has been helpful to you guys. And I wish you guys all the best in getting your Yae Miko and in winning the 50-50 and getting early 5 stars, yeah? Okay, thanks everyone for watching. Bye!